Welcome to Alchemy, the podcast for HR professionals who are ready to experience what's possible from the inside out. I'm your host, Sara Maude, former HR insider and transformational coach. And I'm here to guide you into a new paradigm of HR leadership with the science, the energy, and the insights that create true, lasting transformation. So subscribe and join the movement, and let's create the future of HR together. Who are you being when you are doing? That question sits at the heart of the work that we do in the HR inner circle, because who you are being influences everything. And one of my private coaching clients is a wonderful example of this. She's an HR director that came to me on goodness knows how many cycles of burnout. And she recognised that something needed to change, that it just wasn't sustainable for her to keep showing up in this way. And initially when we started to work together, she believed that the burnout, she believed that the way that she was feeling was coming from the job, was coming from the nature of the job role, was coming from her to-do list, was coming from not having enough time and space to work on the strategic things that were needed to move the organisation forward. But actually, when we stopped and took a step back and started to peel back who she was being when she was doing the work, she was being somebody that was a perfectionist. She was being somebody that had set these overinflated expectations of herself, and when she wasn't meeting those expectations, was so hard on herself, so self-critical. She was being somebody that needed to prove herself because underneath it all, she didn't feel that she was good enough. She was being somebody, by her own admission, an imposter. She was being somebody that was micromanaging her team, not delegating effectively, not putting healthy boundaries in place, always saying yes when people wanted her attention and her time. And so when we looked at who she was being, she started to join the dots and realize, the way that I feel, my experience has got nothing to do with all the things that I thought it was to do with. And it's all about how I'm showing up. Now, the truth is that over 95% of the time, who you are being is conditioned. It's the conditioned habitual thought patterns, beliefs, behaviours, emotional responses, which if you've not done the inner work to transform them, you'll just keep doing what you're always doing because it makes sense to you. If we've not transformed those unconscious operating systems, those patterns, those programs, we're going to keep coming up against the same issue again and again and again. We might think, it's just burnout. It's just this organisation. Maybe if I get a new job, that's going to resolve everything. And how many times have you changed job roles and thought, it's just the job. Gone to a different organisation, same stuff. Because if we don't transform who we're being, we will just keep coming up against the same internal mindset barriers. And that's what we're doing in the HR inner circle. We're recognizing and creating the awareness of who we are being. Because a lot of HR professionals that I work with have often gone through psychometric tests like Insights or DISC or Myers-Briggs. And you might get a sense of who you're being in certain scenarios, but it doesn't teach you, well, how do I transform this? When I worked in HR, I was off the scale, D in DISC. I was firmly in the red square in insights. But that didn't help me to understand, well, what's potentially driving that behaviour? Why do I feel the need to be quite so dominant, to be quite so headstrong? And it's only when I started to do the inner work that, just in a very similar way to my client, I recognized it was coming from this belief that I needed to prove myself. And there's a difference between believing that you need to prove yourself and just simply wanting to do a really good job. My own was coming from a belief that I wasn't good enough just as I was. So I felt this need to prove myself, which came across in quite dominating behaviours. So things like psychometrics will only take us so far. And so what we're doing in the HR inner circle is we're raising our levels of self-awareness, we're raising our consciousness to be able to identify what are often unconscious patterns of behaviour, patterns of thought and belief that are no longer serving us. Beliefs that were created when we were still very, very small, but that haven't been transformed. I believe these things about myself. I've lost count of the amount of people, especially women in the HR world, that are walking around from this belief, this identity that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, I'm not adequate, I don't belong. That's who they were being when they were doing. And yet, why do we choose to believe these things about ourselves? It's not that these beliefs, these stories are true, but they are the lens that we will filter everything through. It's like if we're going around with a belief that we're not good enough, we're not adequate, then the unconscious bias is searching for evidence to keep feeding those loops. So they keep reaffirming the story. And when we're under pressure, when we're experiencing stress, effectively when the shit hits the fan, we get what we've practiced. And so if we really want to upgrade our sense of self, we want to upgrade our identity, we want to upgrade who we are being when we are doing, then that starts with self-awareness. And by self-awareness, I do not mean judging. I think it's very easy for us to start judging ourselves for having these thought patterns, having these beliefs, these emotional responses or behaviors. But I would just invite you, when you do recognize something that's been playing out that isn't serving you, is that you meet it with compassion. That you recognize, do you know what? This is just a habitual, conditioned response. And be grateful that you've seen it. Because once you've seen it, you're aware of it. And when we're aware of it, we can start to change it. So I would love to know what you've heard, what you've seen in this episode. So do feel free to share those comments in the comments box. I will be sharing more details with you very shortly about the HR Inner Circle. But in the meantime, do subscribe, and I look forward to you joining me on another episode very soon. Bye bye for now.